Okay. Okay. Hi. Okay. Today, this is our second class in transit, but in the transits. But this is the calculation class. I have to explain the calculations to you. It's fairly easy, and it's so useful. So I'm going to explain it two ways. I've sent you some downloads. You can see there's downloads on the on your screen on the panel under handouts. Okay, so you can download those directly. I'll send them to you again, probably when I send you the video later tonight. Okay, so we're going to start with Saturn to Saturn, the calculations of Saturn to Saturn. And our next class next week is going to be the interpretation of Saturn to Saturn, and which is a primary important one, Saturn to itself, which we all go through. And then the following week, we're going to be doing Saturn to the Sun and Saturn to the Moon. And then the week after that, Saturn to Venus, Saturn to Mars, or Saturn to Mercury, Saturn to Venus, then Saturn to Mars and Jupiter. And then we'll go on to the outer planets. But Saturn's the backbone of all of them. It's the backbone. If you have your respect, your duty, your self-discipline in place, and you have some integrity, you'll get respect, you'll get accomplishments. You'll be able to achieve things. So your efforts will be meaningful. So this is the foundation of living. It takes work to be alive. It takes effort to go along. And the more we compromise it, the more difficult our life gets. The more we work with it, the more we can accomplish. And some people have a better relationship to Saturn than others. And with everybody, we still got to get through the day. We got to get through the week. We got to get through the month. We got to get through the years. We got to get through the different phases of cycles. We got to get through each 30-year cycle. So it's a natural thing. It's a basic factor, but it really is the anchor. If your Saturn isn't working well, if you're not living responsibly or respectfully, or at least practically, it's going to interfere with, you're going to have a wrong understanding. If you have a wrong understanding, you're going to direct your energies wrong. If your understanding aligns to your Saturn, and it can guide your Mars better, and you can accomplish better again. So Saturn is the key. We're going to spend lots of time on Saturn, so we'll be going over this. But if you take the outer planets that are the more extreme factors that come in, they're disruptions to the order, to the Saturn. They're things that tend to disrupt or disturb or upset our accomplishments or challenge them or change them. And they only work well if your Saturn is secure against the negative defects, the negative challenges they bring, and can work them to make them positive. No matter how you take it, whether you're looking at inner cycles or outer cycles, your discipline, your effort, your sense of responsibility, your sense of achievement, this is all the most important factor. So to start with our calculations, we're going to have to, you always, every planet first, it has a relationship to itself going around, and that sets a standard for the whole cycle. Saturn to itself, Jupiter to itself, Mars to itself, Uranus to itself, Neptune to itself, Pluto. They each have their own unique cycle before you look at anything fancy. So it's important to understand the cycle, because each bend in the cycle is interwoven and has an effect on each other bend in the cycle. And these things, and as you watch the whole cycle, it spreads itself over 30 years, and we see the primary influences that pile up and affect each other and that make the big changes in our life. So we're going to start with Saturn, but with any planet, we have to start in the cycle of transits. We're going to be working with the main aspect, the conjunctions, the squares, the oppositions, the square, the conjunction. We're going to work with the four main aspects. To just get the sense of the continuity of the cycle of the main crises, the other factors inside there, they're add-ons and they're stages within the phases of these four basic phases, four basic aspects. So this everything begins at the conjunction. It's the start of the cycle. It begins when you're born. You have your cycle. You start with Saturn to Saturn. Then it spreads out 7 years later, or more or less, it's going to hit the square at 14, 15. It's going to oppose itself. It's going to hit the opposition. At 2021, it's going to come back to the square. And then at 28, 29, around 29, it's going to come back to the Saturn return. So we're calculating the 4 main turning points, the 4 crises points. I call them crises points because challenges come up and pressure comes up from that planet at these turning points, at the conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. And when they crises, my definition of crises is opportunities for growth, challenges that provide opportunities for growth. It's a basic instinct we have. We don't come into life to take our first breath unless we come through the pressure of the restrictions of the cervix. Going through the cervix and going out of it pushes the body so that out of the contraction we become our own being from our own breath. And everything starts from there. But everything else in life has this stress, tension, and expansion, like the pressure and then the resolution of the pressure, and things move on. So the phases, we're going to calculate these 4 aspects. We're really going to calculate 12 of them. We're going to look across 90 years or 100 years and see what they do for our lifetime. And once we have the aspects in place, we have the phases to between each phase. So it's not only important that we can see the critical times and the critical adjustments at the conjunction, squares, and oppositions, but when we come to understand the phases, what happens in the phase between the conjunction and the square, between the square and the opposition, between the opposition and the square and the conjunction, well, it starts to bring meaning to the whole cycle. So when we actually work with transits, you use the crises to precipitate, you use the crises times to bring an issue to the head, to talk about issues, things will be brought up to a moment you have to deal with when they're critical times. You use the phases to diminish the crises. If you're dealing with the phases properly and you're coming from this phase and you understand the phase you're going to, the crisis is more just a simple adjustment like breathing in and out. So this idea of aspects and phases, crises, times, and phases between them, this is the texture of working with transits that can be very healing. You don't have to, everything doesn't have to be shocking or depressing or confronting. You can see this is happening now, or it's only happening for the next year or two, but it's coming from here. And this is where it's going to. And that's why you have to make this effort now. So this is part of the process of understanding. Right now, we got to calculate them. So to start with this, just do another little graphics series. Okay, this is my chart. The Saturn, my Saturn, is at 7 degrees 49 minutes of Leo. Okay, never mind where everything else is. It's at 7:49 of Leo. That's what we're starting from there. 1946, October 17th. We'll start from there. And then, so when we when we look at our birth time, normally we used to do this from the ephemeris, so this is much easier to see in using the ephemeris. But Saturn moves forward because the Earth is moving around. It goes retrograde and direct every year. And generally, when Saturn's on the side of away from the sun, on the part away from the sun, that's when it's retrograde. But when it's retrograde, so when you're looking at the zodiac, Saturn will move forward, it will move back, and then it'll move forward again. And you can be born before it does this. You can be born in the middle of it. You can be born when it's retrograde. It'll go back. It'll turn around again and come forward again. So the technical thing is, when you're looking for this, you're going to have to look at the start of the day you're born at, and you're going to have to look forward in the ephemeris to look forward to see if Saturn goes forward, if it backs up, if it goes retrograde and backs up and touches this point again. If it backs up again and touches the 7 degrees Leo again. So you have to, the first aspects, you have to look in that first year or so to see if the Saturn from when you're born is going to move back and forth across that same degree, or if it's just going to be going straight forward. Okay, those are the first aspects you have to look for. Then once you see that it's not, you're past the point where Saturn's not coming back anymore, when you see that in the ephemeris, you're going to be able to go forward, and you jump about 7 years forward, and you look for when it's going to hit 7 degrees, 49 minutes, same degree minute in Scorpio, 90 degrees away. And you're going to see Saturn's going to come along, and it's going to conjunct this, it's going to conjunct the square point, it's going to retrograde, going to back up, and conjunct it again. So usually you're going to get 3 hits of a planet going over a point, but sometimes, on occasion, Saturn will go through it once. Okay, so usually it's 3. Sometimes it can be 2. Sometimes it can be 1. So, but when you see it and you catch the first one, you don't just go ahead 7 years. You got to look a little bit forward to see when the second hit, when the third hit is, and when it's moving forward to be away from that. Then we're going to jump 7 years ahead, and we'll look when Saturn's in Aquarius in the ephemeris, and we're going to look to see when it gets to 749. Really, when we're looking in the ephemeris, we're going to look with a degree before, a degree after. We're looking within around that time, close to that time. So it's not going to be the exact date we're looking for. We're looking for a month. It'll be a month or two when it's within a degree of that point. So then we got to go, when you look, see 749 Aquarius, Saturn's going to move along. It's going to go forward. It's going to go backwards. It's going to go forward again. And once you got the 2 or 3 of them, and you see it's gone further on Aquarius, it's not coming back to 749, then you're going to jump 7 years ahead again and look for 749 of Taurus and do the same thing. And then once you finish with 749, you're going to go back and start the cycle over again. You 749 Leo at 30, 749 Scorpio will come in around 36, 37. Then you get into 43, 44 for Aquarius, and you're going to go around and you're going to go through the 3 cycles of your life. So you've got 12 points to calculate, but there'll be 2 or 3 times for each one of those. Okay, and I'm not looking at anything else happening in the chart. I'm just watching Saturn to itself. We want to get this backbone secured so we understand what it's doing, and then we'll see how it spins off to the other planets. So as we calculate the one, we'll see the phase going up the other. This is just to have a visual, so when we get to all the numbers in the ephemeris, you're not intimidated by it. You realize we're going through it for specific points of information. I mean, the ephemeris or the book is the original computer database. We just flip through the pages to get it. And it is around, so I think that's the last one. Okay. So now, so the other thing, we have the cycle, and I showed this to you last week. We changed the cycle into a wave curve, a sine curve, into a wave. So you're going to see it over a period of time. So you see this up and down and up curve. And we're going to draw it because it's easier to draw as straight lines, like you're going to, as this bottom, on the diagram on the bottom right, you're going to see 0 to 90 degrees at the square, to 180 to 90 degrees, or 270 at the waning square, back to conjunction. So all the conjunctions and oppositions will happen along the straight line, and the opposition and the squares will be above or below. So this is how we're going to watch this over time, and we got to find the dates when these timings happen. Once we have the dates, we have also, it gives us the dates, and also lets us see the phase from this date to the next date.